Welcome to the Emblazers show, the show for B2B Leaders Igniting Revenue. I'm your host, Amanda, and I am joined by Tim Reister, our Chief Strategy Officer here at Emblaze. Although I am flying solo today, had a fantastic conversation with Kristen Twining. She's the SVP of National Sales at FireMon, and we chatted all around diversity in the workplace, specifically around how to close the gap of women sales leaders and in the parity that we sit in today. Is a really great discussion around some of the best practices that she's been able to initiate at FireMon. It's well worth the listen. Go check it out. Our guest today is Kristen Twining. Kristen is a powerhouse in enterprise technology and is a respected executive leader. As Senior Vice President of Sales in the Americas for FireMon, she's known for transforming organizations and driving exceptional growth across markets. Kristen has built a reputation for turning vision into reality, leading large-scale transformations and developing high-performing teams that consistently deliver outstanding results. She brings that same bold energy and strategic insight to our conversation today. Kristen, I'm so excited to chat with you. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, you too. My gosh, that was such a kind intro. Thanks you.
Well, you have a quite extensive resume. You've been in the industry for quite some time. And it's really fun to get a chance to talk to a woman sales leader because in the B2B sales space, in and of itself, right, it's less than 30% women represent that, but even less so as a sales leader. Only, I think it's 20% are women leaders. I'm curious because you've obviously done a lot of transformation for sales organizations. When you talk about progress in sales leadership, diversity is a huge part of that conversation. Do you think we're actually getting better at building diversity, especially in high performing teams, or is it more talk than action?
Yeah, I think that statistics will show you that maybe incrementally we're getting better if you want to look at it on paper. Your statistics were spot on. I actually am aware that if you actually break that down into tech, which is the space that I have sold in my whole career, as you alluded to, those numbers actually shrink. So for women in sales leadership and tech, it's actually about 12%.
Wow.
And that is not good in my opinion. And what's interesting though is when you look at women in tech sales, it's about 25 to 30%. And the big question is, why is that drop? Right? One, I think we need to do way better than 25 to 30%. If you look at women in sales outside of tech, that number increases a little bit. But in tech, that number stands. And then you look at leadership and there's a massive drop off. Right. And I think that, again, statistics, if you look maybe over year, incrementally, we're getting better. But are we really? And a lot of that comes with it's not just about diversity and checking a box. It's about what are we doing to ensure that women feel that they continue to have a seat at the table? What are we doing to, yes, maybe we're doing a great job of attracting young, fresh talent to come into sales or come into tech sales, but clearly we're missing something where these women aren't feeling like they can continue their career, whether that's continuing as maybe an individual contributor or continuing in leadership. And so I would again say that on paper, yeah, maybe we look like we're getting better, but I still think we have a very long way to go.
I think that's an understatement. I mean, hearing that, 12% represented, especially in the tech field, at a time where we are so honed in and laser focused of of technology, of AI industry, companies, etc. You made a statement like, "What are we doing to get women at the table?" What have you all been doing? What have you done or initiated to help drive more women in the leadership spaces?
I think, again, right, it's impossible not to notice that we're not entirely there. And I think it takes work. And, I speak to a lot of people in my field, and we will all admit that it's hard, but that can't be the reason why. And I think it's about embracing other females, giving them a voice, making sure that you're advocating for them. Making sure that you're standing up and showing them that, hey, this is possible, and helping them overcome some of the challenges that maybe they see, or maybe they have a misconception about, and really taking an onus of seeking people out. I think when I look back early in my career, I don't think that anybody really seeked me out as much as I seeked them out. And I sometimes wish that people would have maybe embraced me a little bit more, because it's hard. It's very daunting, right? You look around you, you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm the only female at this table. Or maybe I'm not the only female at this table and there's one other, but it almost feels like there's a division. And I think that females really need to be cognizant of it and really ensure that not only that females are seen and heard, but you're embracing them. I think there's sort of this unspoken bond between us when we're at a table together. And we just need to embrace that. Sometimes I think, especially being in sales, it's a very competitive field. So whether it's a man or a woman, you feel like you are in competition constantly, because that's what sales is. But I think you need to be a little bit more laser focused on embracing, advocating, and I think just being intentional about making sure that you are extending an olive branch. And there can still be competition in what the sales field needs you to have, but never should you let that get in the way of bringing up another female, and maybe making that bond not unspoken, but spoken.
You are uh, preaching to the choir here. It is one of the things you say about embracing that other leader, woman leader that's sitting at the table. I also would say advocating and let's acknowledge that there is this gap of you know gender sitting at the leadership seat. Um, have you in your experience, or what have you in your experience as a senior leader sort of done to recognize diversity? Is there any sort of special initiatives, any of these sort of small things that have really helped drive a sense of belonging for women leaders to feel more comfortable in their space?
Well, first, I think you're spot on with, you have to acknowledge it. And it's not just about acknowledging it myself, it's making sure that I use my platform and my voice to ensure that people above me and around me also acknowledge it. Because it can be one thing for me to acknowledge it, but we all have to come together to make sure that we're actually doing something about it. And sometimes I think you have to advocate for that. I don't think that in maybe, some men wake up every day and say to themselves, man, I'm really doing a poor job at bringing diversity in, or I need to do better, or I think it's just something that's just, we go about our day, right? And I think we have to really, really make sure that we're standing up for that. Some things that I've done, there's some phenomenal organizations out there, whether it's Emblaze. I've met a lot of female leaders or people in sales through that community. Getting involved in communities and making sure that your organization is also helping to get involved in those communities. We just hired a new female here in one of our junior roles, and thinking about what should we be doing to set her up for success, right? Maybe like a girls club with our friend Lauren Bailey, who's incredible, and really just taking the onus and saying what's out there and what as an organization can we go commit to. And I've been able to successfully bring that to organizations before. The other thing that it was years ago, but I'm super proud of, is I worked for a very large company prior to FireMon years ago. And, tech companies in general have done a lot of work to make sure that they have better programs like maternity leave that has been extended significantly. But one of the things that was exciting is I was on maternity leave, and actually through maternity leave, I went to a conference that was a leadership conference that I needed to be at. And I was a nursing mother, and I had to make sure that we had I was set up so that I could still do that, and not have to sacrifice that for what I needed to do for work. And there's a company called Milk Stork,
Mhm.
And I had the company fund and help set that up for me. And then it actually became a formal part of our HR and program for m- women who were coming back to work after being on maternity leave. And so it's things like that, they may seem hard because, oh, it's a big company, it'll be so hard to cut through the tape and get this complete. But it's really, you have to start. You have to take initiative, and we all know that being in sales that you gotta go ask for the order, right? You have to ask for it or else you'll never know what the answer will be, and so I think a lot of it is just around advocating, making sure that it's not only you that acknowledges it and making sure that you really hold not only yourself, but your team and your leadership accountable for really doing something about it.
Kristen, these are some just incredible examples, and I'm sure you have tons more on how you've advocated for women in leadership roles. I want to switch the conversation just slightly because from a selling perspective, it's been under fire for years, where many companies are still just clinging to the same old playbook, doing the same old thing, and expecting different results. We know what that definition is called, right?
Mm.
I'm curious from your perspective, how does a lack of diversity in sales leadership in this decision making impact the way companies are approaching selling?
Yeah.
And I'll add a second question to that too is like, and how can you break from this traditional mindset to have a more inclusive sales strategy?
I think that the traditional sales playbook in general needs a relook. I mean, there's always going to be foundational aspects to what sales is and the things that you need to do to progress opportunities, to gain traction and credibility with your buyer. But I think sometimes traditional sales books or sales plays or they can sometimes emphasize aggressive closing tactics, right? And not to say that we shouldn't be aggressive, but how do we be professionally aggressive? And how do we earn the right to ask for that order? I think that's one of the biggest things, right? One of the most, in my opinion, overlooked aspects of sales and successful sales leaders or successful sales reps is emotional intelligence, which is the ability to recognize and understand and manage emotions in your clients and yourself and your interactions. And research will tell you that women, on average, score higher in EQ competencies, right? Things like empathy or active listening, which is something I think in the sales world we are talking so much about, right? It's about how are you not just listening, but actively listening to the conversation, to your clients, to your buyer, to their needs. And I think all of those things are absolutely critical in today's complex sales landscape. And so I think as when you look at diversity, again, we started this conversation about it's not just about a check mark, it's about the conversations and that are happening at the table, and our buyers are different. Our buyers are changing dramatically, and our buyers want, I think, a bit of a different sales playbook. They want us to be more consultative. They want us to be more credible, and we get a bad rep being in sales, let's just be honest. And I think that women can absolutely bring another angle to this that really takes that emotional intelligence to another level.
You are just highlighting some of the recent conversations we've had with some other women leaders. And in fact, a few podcasts ago, we had Dr. Lef Bani on the line, and where we talked about just the science behind what needs to change in the sales cycle. And emotional intelligence is single-handedly what as a result came out of it. And it's great to hear that the two parts of that, active listening and empathy, is what you shared. And to back up and support the research, that it was specifically that women do a better job, and no shade to the gentlemen that are listening to the podcast, but women typically do a better job of active listening and empathy. I'm curious then, from just from a support standpoint in your organization or in previous roles, any sort of initiative to help your team members increase their EQ, their EI?
It's hard because some can argue that EQ is an innate skill. It's very hard to teach, but it doesn't mean that it's not hard to coach, right? Or it's hard to coach, I should say. I mean, coaching is 101 in sales leadership as you're working with your team on how they're thinking about their pipeline, how they're progressing their pipeline. And while, yes, it's hard to say, "Hey, you need to go have emotional intelligence," there are things that you can call out based on listening using technology, for example, right? I mean, this is just a little, blurb here for Gong, but I love it, right? Whatever technology you're using, but one of the things I love about it is you can literally go into the AI after listening to a call and say, "Hey, I don't think I had enough emotional intelligence here. What should I have done differently?" Right? It sounds silly, but AI and technology can really help you through some of that. And I think as a leader, just calling it out and just saying, "Hey, I think one of the things you may have missed here was that connection with the client. I don't think that you're picking up on sort of where their mind is or maybe where their concerns are because sales is psychological. There is definitely a psychological aspect to sales and there's a relationship to sales. I don't think that relationship is the only thing. I think gone are the days where relationship is the only tool you have in your tool bucket, but the relationship is extremely important. And in order to gain a connection or a relationship, you have to start with understanding and being on the same level and same page as your client and understanding their concerns and hesitations to moving forward. And so I think all of those are really important. And I think sometimes, yes, you have to be able to understand that it is somewhat innate, but there are coaching tools and mechanisms. And the last thing that I'll say on this is one of the things that we've adopted in our organization, our CEO has been incredible at getting this together from across the organization is a scorecard on when we're hiring people, the things that we're looking for in a candidate. And one of those areas is emotional intelligence and the things that we need to ask or the things that we need to be thinking about as we're hiring people into our organization, knowing that that is such an important skill that we are looking for.
That's and hey, yay, uh, plug for Gong, and no, they did not pay us to to share that they have some really great technology, but it is true, and I love that you're highlighting this, that, from a coaching perspective, and it's just in time coaching as well is what I hear from you. You you talk about having a scorecard from the hiring perspective. I'm curious from you have built these tremendous teams and you've got leaders reporting into you and leaders of leaders reporting into you. What would you say is like the single-handedly most important uh, part of emotional intelligence? What characteristic are you really trying to hone in when you're having a conversation?
I don't think there's just one, but I think empathy is really important. One of the things, and again, I feel like I'm doing plugs for people here, but there's a really great book out there called The Jolt Effect. It's kind of, I call it the sister to the Challenger sale.
Yeah.
And the book is around no decision, losing to no decision. And a lot of us lose to that, right? And especially in the security world where security can be viewed as, call it an insurance policy, we oftentimes can find ourselves in a no decision situation. And I think if you establish that connection and that empathy with that buyer, that client early on, you can start to snip that out early and you can start to understand like there's a hesitation here. I see that there's a need and that there's an impact to the business if this doesn't happen, but I'm starting to see that this person is starting to feel very uncomfortable about this and why. And I think it takes a level of emotional intelligence to really understand that. You can't just go through the motions, medic, whatever you want to call it, whatever your organization subscribes to from a methodology perspective. You have to be able to be in the deal. You can't just be checking the boxes. And you have to understand that there's a personality, there's a psychology here, and clients are nervous. They don't want to take a risk. And it's important that you understand and you start to sniff out some of those concerns really early on so that you can address them and help to ensure that it doesn't mitigate or challenge the deal or the decision.
Kristen, I want to go back to the first stat that you shared all around, that less than 11% of sales tech leaders are women, and you've spent your entire career, in the sales tech space. I'm really curious what has kept you in it to now be in such an incredible leadership position.
I mean, sales is awesome. It's the best career ever, is what I tell everybody.
That's it. Period. Done.
We're done.
Okay.
Uh,
Podcast over. Sales is awesome. Kristen is awesome.
I think I'm someone who perseveres. I push through the hard stuff. And to sit here and tell you that a career in sales and sales leadership has not been hard would be a lie. And I think it's just standing up and saying and looking at every young female who has an ambition to get into this world, it is possible. And I am living proof that it is possible. And, life hits you no matter what career you're going to be in. And I also think it takes a very strong support system around you, whether that's personal and or professional. And I think, again, we talked about having to seek that out. And I think you have to seek that out. And it's not just seeking it out women to women, which is very important, but it's also looking at the males and the roles that you want to be in and seeking them out and understanding what it takes to get there. I'll never forget my first time I ever had met with my VP when I was hired out of college in my first job. I was a sales individual contributor selling to large accounts, and I had no idea what I was doing. So that was fun. But I sat him down and I looked at him and I said, "So, what's it going to take for me to get in your role?" And I think he nearly spit out his food because he was like, "Girl, slow down. I mean, you're like day two." And I was like, "But I want to know, right? And I want to understand what are the things that I need to do to excel." And also, I had many people tell me, "Hey, this is gonna be hard, right? You're a female in this industry, and the reality is there are still social norms, right? We have children, we have lives, if that's the path that we choose for ourselves. And I think you just have to know anything you do, you have to have eyes wide open and seeking those people out that either have been there or done it or who are in it that may not be like you, but that you want to be a part of. I think you just have to really make sure that you are understanding what's out there. How do I go get it? What are the challenges that are going to be put in front of me that I have to think about overcoming? And also really making sure that if it's your passion, then your passion is going to drive you. You're going to find a way. You are absolutely going to find a way to do it. But it does. It takes a tribe. It takes a tribe of so many people around you, lifting you up, supporting you, picking you up when you fall. I heard this really probably quote that many people have heard before, but I don't know, it just kind of stuck with me the other day is fall 7 times, get back 8. And
Mm.
I don't care whether you're a male or a female, you're always going to fall. And you have to just persevere and you have to just make sure that you ask for help and you have a really strong support system around you.
I absolutely love that, and as I think about the folks that listen to our podcast and they're aspiring leaders, I would say I'm curious on the reverse side. So we've got CROs, CSOs, folks in your position, tuning in to get insights. What would you say reversely? Like, how can a senior leader, folks like you, folks in the CRO capacity, help the Kristen 20 years ago to get where she is? What are some things that you are doing or you've seen successful leaders do to help this?
Yeah. Skip levels, fundamental, foundational, but do it, right? Make sure that if there's a new BDR that's hired and you see that she is doing extremely well, she's hitting her numbers, she's excelling, go reach out, right? Even if you just have 5 females that are on a BDR team, go spend some time with them, right? Just get to know them, take them out to lunch. I mean, I remember when I was at a large organization meeting about 300 people, skip levels were so incredibly important to me. And it was skip level to skip level to skip level. And
Mhm.
I would take people out to lunch in groups of 4 or 5. And it would take me, a while to get through everybody. But I would make sure that I was getting to know people, and you can't just lead from the top, you have to lead from the front. And it's so incredibly important that just again, you have to seek people out. I think that's one of the things I said earlier. Yeah, I was someone who took the opportunity to seek people out myself, put time on people's calendars, made them go out to lunch with me. But I get that not everybody is like that. And sometimes we as leaders can absolutely look like we're not approachable. Even if we are, right? We're busy, we have a lot going on. Sometimes you can look very stressed, and people might perceive that as, oh, she is not approachable. So you have to make yourself approachable and you have to take that initiative, because if you don't, there's always going to be this gap. Whether it's a perceived gap or an actual gap, you have to make sure that you are doing your part to close that gap and to take the initiative to reach out. It's pretty simple to go have lunch, go have a cup of coffee, or throw 15 minutes on somebody's calendar. It's not that hard.
You're so right, and as I'm sitting here listening to you, and I think early on in my career, I didn't start in the sales rev gen world, but the single-handed most impactful boss I ever worked for, senior leader, has took the time and to understand me, s- go to lunch with me, and I never forgot that moment. And at that moment, I realized that in my career, I wanted to exemplify that kind of trait to be a great leader. I wrote down what you just said here. Don't lead from the top, lead from the front. And it's these small acts that, as a senior leader, you have to be intentionally doing, and it is recognized in your BDRs and managers. They recognize this, and it's going to continue to fuel them. And I think this is just going to help close that gap of, this big diversity gap that we have from a sales leadership perspective. I love these stories. I love these insights, Kristen. I could talk to you on and on about all these things. And I appreciate so much for you being on the show with us today.
Well, thank you. It's been so fun. I really appreciated the time. And this is a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. And I was really happy to have the opportunity to share. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. What an incredible conversation with Kristen. I loved hearing these insights of these small but intentional things that senior leaders can do to help continue to drive diversity and inclusivity in the workplace. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Emblazers show. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and hey, give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening or watching this podcast. We'll see you next time on one of our shows.